The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Bragg as Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood at attention outside the Special Operations Command building. At 5'4" and 120 pounds, she knew exactly what the men inside were thinking. She'd heard it all before. "You sure you're in the right place, sweetheart?" A sergeant walked past, coffee in hand, smirking. "The regular Army medical units are on the other side of base." Sarah kept her eyes forward. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Sergeant." He chuckled and kept walking. She'd been dealing with this for 6 years, ever since she'd enlisted right out of college in Portland, Oregon. Her parents had wanted her to be a doctor. She'd wanted to serve. The compromise was becoming an Army medic, though her father still introduced her as almost a doctor at family gatherings. The door opened. A tall officer with a chest full of medals stepped out. Commander James Hartley, the man who would decide if she joined the Special Operations medical team. "Lieutenant Chen, come in." The room was sparse. A desk, 3 chairs, and an American flag in the corner. 2 other men sat against the wall, both Navy SEALs by the looks of their uniforms. One was older, maybe 50, with gray at his temples. The other couldn't have been more than 30, built like he bench-pressed trucks for fun. "Gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Sarah Chen," Commander Hartley said, settling behind his desk. "She's applying for the Special Operations Combat Medic position." The younger SEAL snorted. He didn't even try to hide it. "Something funny, Petty Officer Martinez?" Hartley asked. "No, sir, just, are we really doing this? Sir, with all due respect, we need someone who can keep up, someone who can carry their weight, literally." Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept quiet. She'd learned that lesson the hard way in basic training. Let them talk, prove them wrong later. The older SEAL, whose name tape read Morrison, leaned forward. "Commander, I've read her file. She's got excellent marks, top of her class at Fort Sam Houston, commendations from her time in Afghanistan, but Martinez has a point. Special Operations is different. The physical demands." "I'm aware of the demands," Sarah interrupted. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her. "I've studied the requirements for 18 months. I've been training specifically for this position. I can meet every physical standard you have." Martinez stood up. "Every standard. You know what we do out there. We're not running nice clean evacuation routes. We're carrying wounded men through mountains, through jungles, sometimes under fire. No vehicles, no backup, just us." "I understand that." "Do you?" He crossed his arms. "Can you fireman carry a 200-pound man? Can you drag dead weight for a mile? Can you do that at altitude in the heat when you've already been awake for 30 hours? Sarah met his eyes. "I can do whatever it takes to save lives. That's why I'm here." "That's a nice speech," Martinez shot back. "But speeches don't save lives in the field. Strength does, endurance does." Commander Hartley held up a hand. "That's enough. Lieutenant Chen, you'll undergo the standard evaluation course. 3 weeks. If you pass, you're in. If you don't, you return to your current unit. Fair?" "Yes, sir." "Dismissed. Report to the training grounds at 0500 tomorrow." Sarah saluted and left. Behind her, she heard Martinez's voice through the door. "She won't last a week." That night in her small apartment off base, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from anger, from frustration, from 6 years of being looked at like she didn't belong. Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend Jessica, a nurse back in Portland. "How'd it go?" Sarah typed back, "About what I expected. They think I'm too small, too weak, too female." "You going to quit?" Sarah smiled at that. Jessica knew better, not a chance. The 3 weeks that followed were the hardest of Sarah's life. And she'd been through combat in Afghanistan, where she'd earned her first commendation for treating 12 wounded soldiers during a 6-hour firefight. The evaluation course was designed to break people, run 5 miles with a 60-pound pack, navigate an obstacle course, Perform combat medicine scenarios under stress. Drag a 200-pound dummy 300 meters. Do it all on minimal sleep and food. There were 8 candidates. Sarah was the only woman. By day 3, 2 men had dropped out. By day 7, 2 more were gone. Martinez showed up every day to watch, his arms crossed, waiting for her to fail. On day 10, during a particularly brutal ruck march through the woods, Sarah stumbled. Her ankle rolled on a root and she went down hard. The pack drove her into the dirt. For a moment she just lay there, pain shooting up her leg. Martinez was there in seconds. "You done?" She looked up at him. His face showed no sympathy, just expectation. He expected her to quit. They all did. Sarah pushed herself up. Her ankle screamed in protest. "No. Your ankle's hurt. You should get that checked. After I finish. You've got another 8 miles. Then I better get moving." She limped the entire way. Every step was agony. The other candidates passed her one by one, but she kept going. When she finally crossed the finish line, 40 minutes past the cutoff time, Commander Hartley was waiting. "You failed the time requirement," he said. "Yes, sir." "But you finished." "Yes, sir." He looked at her for a long moment. "Get that ankle treated. Be back here tomorrow at 0500. That night the base medic wrapped her ankle and gave her crutches. She threw the crutches in her car and didn't use them. The next morning she showed up at 0500, ankle taped tight, ready to go. Morrison was there, watching the candidates prepare for the day's exercises. He walked over to Sarah. "Heard about yesterday. How's the ankle?" "Fine, sir." "You're limping." "I'll manage." He studied her face. "Why are you doing this? You could have a nice, safe career as a regular medic. Good job, decent hours, no one shooting at you. Why put yourself through this?" Sarah had thought about that question a lot over the years. "Because in Afghanistan, I saw what happens when the medic can't reach the wounded. I watched good men die because help couldn't get to them fast enough. If I can be the kind of medic who can go anywhere, do anything, save anyone, that's worth it. That's worth all of this." Morrison nodded slowly. "I had a medic like you once, saved my life in Iraq. Tiny guy, maybe 5'6", but he dragged me half a mile under fire. Everyone said he was too small for the job too." He paused. "He died on his next deployment, IED. Best medic I ever knew." He walked away, leaving Sarah standing there, more determined than ever. By day 14, only 3 candidates remained. Sarah and 2 men, both over 6 feet tall and built like athletes. The physical tests got harder, longer runs, heavier packs, more complex medical scenarios. On day 16, they did a simulation. A teammate down in hostile territory, treat him under fire, then extract him. The dummy weighed 220 pounds. The extraction route was uphill half a mile, with instructors firing blank rounds the whole way. The first candidate got the dummy 200 meters before his legs gave out. The second made it 300 meters. Then it was Sarah's turn. She loaded the dummy onto her shoulders in a fireman's carry. Every muscle in her body protested. Her ankle throbbed, but she started moving. One step, then another. The blank rounds cracked around her. Instructors shouted. She blocked it all out and focused on one thing, moving forward. At 100 meters, her legs started shaking. At 200, she thought she might collapse. At 300, she couldn't feel her shoulders anymore. But she kept going. She thought about the men she'd lost in Afghanistan, the ones she couldn't save. She thought about every person who'd told her she couldn't do this. She crossed the finish line at 470 meters, 10 meters short of the full distance. Martinez was there, stopwatch in hand. "Not good enough, Lieutenant, 50 more meters." Sarah's legs buckled. She went down to one knee, still holding the dummy. "Give me a minute." "No minutes in combat," Martinez said. "Either you can do it or you can't." She looked up at him, sweat burning her eyes. Then she looked past him and saw Morrison. The older SEAL gave her the slightest nod. Sarah gritted her teeth, adjusted the dummy on her shoulders, and stood back up. Her legs screamed. Her lungs burned. She took one step, then another, 40 meters, 30, 20. At 10 meters, her vision started to gray at the edges. At 5 meters, she wasn't sure which way was up, but she crossed that line. She made it. Then she gently set the dummy down, walked 3 steps to the side, and vomited into the grass. When she straightened up, wiping her mouth, every instructor was staring at her. Martinez's expression was unreadable. Commander Hartley stepped forward. Day 17 tomorrow, 0500, dismissed. That night Sarah could barely move. Every muscle was on fire. She lay on her couch, ice packs on her shoulders and ankle, and wondered if she could actually finish this. 7 more days. Could she make it? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered it. Lieutenant Chen, this is Master Chief Morrison. Yes, sir. I just wanted to call and say, what you did today was impressive. I've been doing this for 28 years. I've seen a lot of candidates. You've got something most of them don't. Heart. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. The next week is going to be worse, but I think you can make it. I think you should make it. The teams need medics who refuse to quit. Just keep doing what you're doing. He hung up. Sarah lay there in the dark, Morrison's words echoing in her head. For the first time since this started, she let herself believe she might actually succeed. The next morning she showed up early. Martinez was already there, going through his own workout. He saw her and stopped. You should have quit yesterday, he said. Not mean, just matter of fact. Probably, Sarah agreed, but I didn't. He studied her for a moment. Why not? Because quitting means men die. I won't let that happen, not if I can help it. Martinez picked up his water bottle, took a drink, and walked away. But as he passed her, he said quietly, "Same time tomorrow, Lieutenant." It wasn't much, but it was the first time he'd called her by her rank instead of just questioning her presence. Sarah took it as a small victory. The final week of evaluation would test everything she had, but Sarah Chen had never quit anything in her life. She wasn't about to start now. The morning of day 20 began like all the others, with darkness and cold and the sound of boots on pavement. But today was different. Today was the final field exercise, the one that would determine who passed and who went home. Commander Hartley stood before the 3 remaining candidates, Sarah and the 2 men, both of whom had barely spoken to her during the entire evaluation. They didn't ignore her out of meanness now, more like respect. She'd earned that much at least. Gentlemen and Lieutenant, Hartley began. Today's exercise simulates a real-world scenario. Your team has been ambushed in hostile territory, multiple casualties. You'll be given coordinates. You'll navigate there, assess the situation, provide medical treatment, and extract the wounded. The terrain is rough. The distance is significant, and you'll be evaluated on speed, medical competence, and decision-making under pressure. He paused, looking at each of them. In special operations, we don't leave anyone behind. Remember that. Dismissed. They loaded into a truck that drove them 30 minutes into the mountains outside Fort Bragg. When they stopped, they were in the middle of nowhere. Trees, rocks, and hills in every direction. Martinez and Morrison were waiting, along with several other SEALs Sarah didn't recognize. They were playing the casualties. Your teammates are 1,000 meters that way, Morrison pointed up a steep hill. Clock starts now. The 3 candidates took off running. Sarah's ankle still hurt, but she'd learned to manage the pain. The 2 men were faster on flat ground, but Sarah had grown up hiking in Oregon. She knew how to move in terrain like this. They reached the casualties in 12 minutes. What Sarah saw made her heart sink. 4 men down. Morrison was unconscious. Martinez had a sucking chest wound. The other 2 SEALs had compound fractures and severe bleeding. The 2 male candidates immediately started arguing about who should treat which patient. Sarah ignored them and went straight to Martinez. The sucking chest wound was the most immediately life-threatening. "I need an occlusive dressing," she called out, already cutting away his shirt. One of the other candidates tossed her a medical kit. Sarah worked fast, sealing the wound, establishing an airway, checking his vitals, all while the blank rounds continued to crack overhead, simulating ongoing combat. "We need to move," one of the male candidates shouted. "We're sitting ducks here." "Not until they're stabilized," Sarah shot back. She moved to Morrison, checked his pupils, his breathing, his pulse. Severe concussion, possible internal bleeding. She started an IV line. The other two candidates worked on the remaining casualties. To their credit, they were good medics. Fast, efficient, thorough. But they kept looking at the hills, nervous about the simulated enemy fire. Sarah blocked it all out. In Afghanistan, she'd learned that panic killed more people than bullets. Stay calm, work the problem, save lives. "Okay," she said after 8 minutes. "They're stable enough to move. We need litters for all four." "There are only 2 litters," one of the candidates said. Sarah looked at the 4 casualties, then at the terrain. They were at the top of a steep hill. The extraction point was at the bottom, then another half-mile through rough ground. Maybe 3,000 meters total. "Then we carry 2, come back for the other 2, the other candidate said. "That'll take too long," Sarah replied. "We do it in one trip, all 4. "Are you crazy? We can't carry 4 men that far." "We can and we will." Sarah was already rigging a litter using branches and paracord from the medical kit. "We're not leaving anyone up here any longer than necessary. In a real scenario, that's when people die." The 2 men exchanged glances but started helping. They got Morrison and Martinez onto the 2 proper litters. Sarah finished her improvised litter for the 3rd casualty. For the 4th, they used a poncho and poles. "All right," Sarah said. "Each of us takes 1 litter. We rotate every 10 minutes to distribute the load." They started down the hill. The weight was crushing. Sarah had the improvised litter, which was awkward and kept shifting. Her shoulders were on fire within 2 minutes. Her ankles screamed with every step on the uneven ground. Behind them, instructors with cameras followed, documenting everything. This was it, the final test. Everything came down to this. At the 10-minute mark, they rotated. Sarah took one of the proper litters with Morrison. He was a big man, easily 230 pounds. She paired up with one of the male candidates, one on each end of the litter. "You okay?" he asked her. It was the first time either of them had asked her that. "I'm fine, keep moving." The terrain got worse. Rocks, roots, narrow passages between trees. Several times they had to set the litters down and figure out a path through. Every second counted. In a real scenario, these men would be dying. At 30 minutes, Sarah's legs were shaking. At 45 minutes, she couldn't feel her arms. But they kept going. No one complained. No one suggested leaving anyone behind. They reached the base of the hill and started across the rough ground toward the extraction point. This should have been easier, but they were all exhausted. Sarah's vision was starting to blur. She'd been running on adrenaline and determination for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to not be in pain. 500 meters, one of the candidates gasped. That's when Sarah stumbled. Her bad ankle gave out and she went down hard. The litter she was carrying tipped, and Morrison rolled into the dirt. Chen, the other candidate, rushed over. Sarah was already getting up. "I'm fine. Get him back on the litter." They got Morrison secured again and kept going. But Sarah was limping badly now. Every step was agony. The other 2 candidates were struggling too, but they were in better shape than her. "Switch out," one of them said. "Take the lightest casualty." "No, we rotate on schedule." "Chen, you can barely walk." "I can walk fine, and we're not stopping." They reached the extraction point 57 minutes after starting. All 4 casualties were with them. All 4 were still stable. Sarah set down her end of the litter and immediately collapsed to her knees. Commander Hartley was there with a medical team. They rushed to check the casualties, not because they were really hurt, but because that was part of the evaluation. How well had the candidates maintained their patience? Morrison sat up, no longer playing unconscious. He looked at Sarah, still on her knees in the dirt, and something in his expression changed. Martinez pulled off the fake wound dressing and walked over. He stood over her for a moment, then extended his hand. "You did good, Lieutenant." Sarah looked up at him, then took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. "Thank you, Petty Officer." "Master Chief Morrison's vital signs are perfect," one of the evaluators called out. "So are the others. Excellent work on the medical treatment." Hartley nodded. "Candidates, you have one more task, written exam. Everything you've learned about special operations medicine. You have 2 hours. Passing score is 90%. The two male candidates groaned. Sarah just nodded. After everything she'd just been through, a written test seemed easy. They took the exam in a small building at the base. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pencil, but her mind was clear. She knew this material. She'd studied it for 18 months. She finished in 90 minutes and turned in her test. Then she went outside and sat on the steps waiting. The adrenaline was wearing off. Everything hurt, but she'd done it. Whatever happened now, she'd done everything they'd asked. One of the male candidates came out 20 minutes later. "How do you think you did?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "You?" "I think I passed, maybe." He sat down next to her. "I'm sorry, by the way." "For what?" "For not talking to you these past 3 weeks. For treating you like you didn't belong. You've proven you belong more than most people who try out for this." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. "Thanks. I'm Davis, by the way, Captain Mike Davis." "Sarah Chen." "I know," he smiled slightly. "Everyone knows who you are by now. The lieutenant who refused to quit. Martinez has been talking about you." "Really? I figured he was hoping I'd fail." "He was at first. Now, I think you've changed his mind. You've changed a lot of minds." The other candidate came out. The 3 of them sat there in the afternoon sun, too exhausted to move, waiting for the results. Commander Hartley appeared an hour later. He held 3 folders. "Captain Davis, 92%, pass." Davis let out a breath and smiled. "Lieutenant Harrison, 94%, pass." The other candidate pumped his fist. "Lieutenant Chen." Sarah stood up, her heart pounding. This was it. After everything, it all came down to this moment. 98%, pass. The world seemed to tilt. Sarah heard the words, but they didn't quite register at first. She'd passed. She'd actually passed. "All 3 of you have successfully completed the Special Operations Combat Medic Evaluation course," Hartley continued. "You'll be assigned to teams within the week. Congratulations." Davis and Harrison shook hands, celebrating. Sarah just stood there, overwhelmed. 6 years of being told she wasn't good enough. 3 weeks of pushing her body past every limit. And she'd done it. Morrison came out of the building. "Lieutenant Chen, a word." Sarah followed him around the corner. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I want you on my team. My SEAL team needs a new combat medic. I've been watching you these past 3 weeks. You're exactly what we need. Tough, smart, won't quit. That's worth more than size or strength. What do you say?" Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. One of the most decorated SEALs in the Navy wanted her on his team. "I'd be honored, Master Chief." "Good, we deploy in 6 months. Afghanistan, classified mission. It's going to be dangerous, but I trust you to keep my men alive." "I won't let you down, sir." "I know you won't." He started to walk away, then turned back. "And Chen, ignore what people say about you. I've seen a lot of soldiers in my time. You're one of the best. Don't ever forget that." That night Sarah called her parents. Her father answered. "Sarah, how did it go?" I passed, Dad. You passed the Special Operations course. Yes. She heard him call to her mother. Then both of them were on the phone, talking over each other, asking questions, telling her how proud they were. For the first time in years, her father didn't mention medical school. He just said he was proud of his daughter, the soldier. After she hung up, Sarah sat in her apartment and let herself cry. Not from sadness or pain, but from relief, from happiness, from the overwhelming emotion of finally being seen for who she really was. The next morning, she reported to Morrison's team. There were 8 SEALs, all men, all watching her walk in. She recognized Martinez among them. Morrison stood at the front of the room. "Gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Sarah Chen. She's our new medic. Some of you know her already. For those who don't, let me be clear, she earned her place here. She's one of us now. Anyone have a problem with that?" Silence, then Martinez spoke up. "No problem here, Master Chief. Welcome to the team, Lieutenant." The others echoed the sentiment. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Acceptance. Finally. "All right," Morrison said. "We've got 6 months to train before deployment. Chen, you'll need to learn our protocols, our tactics, our way of operating. It's going to be intense." "I'm ready, Master Chief." "I know you are." The 6 months that followed were indeed intense, but they were also the best months of Sarah's military career. The SEALs treated her as an equal. They trained together, ate together, became a unit. She learned their tactics, their hand signals, their way of moving through hostile territory. Martinez, surprisingly, became something like a mentor. He pushed her hard, never cutting her slack, but also teaching her everything he knew about operating in combat zones. "You've got the medical skills," he told her one day during a training exercise. "Now you need to think like a SEAL, always have an exit plan, always know where your teammates are, and never, ever hesitate when lives are on the line." "Yes, petty officer." "Call me Martinez. We're teammates now." As deployment approached, Sarah felt both nervous and excited. This was what she'd been working toward, a chance to use her skills where they mattered most, a chance to save lives in the most dangerous situations imaginable. The night before they left, Morrison gathered the team. "Tomorrow we go to Afghanistan. Our mission is classified, but it's going to be dangerous. We're going deep into hostile territory. No backup, no easy extraction, just us." He looked at each of them. "I trust every one of you with my life, and I know you trust each other. That's how we survive. That's how we come home together." Sarah felt the weight of those words. These men were depending on her, and she was depending on them. They were a team, a family. The next morning, they boarded a military transport plane. Destination: Afghanistan. Sarah sat between Martinez and another SEAL named Jackson, a quiet guy from Texas who'd barely said 10 words to her in 6 months. As the plane took off, Jackson finally spoke. "You scared, Lieutenant?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted. He nodded. "Good, that means you're smart. The guys who aren't scared are the ones who get killed." Martinez leaned over. "Just remember your training, stick to the plan, and if everything goes wrong, improvise. That's what we do best." Sarah looked out the window at the ground falling away below. Somewhere out there, in the mountains of Afghanistan, their mission was waiting, and whatever happened, she was ready. She'd proven she could handle the training. Now it was time to prove she could handle the real thing. The heat in Afghanistan was different from anything Sarah had experienced. It wasn't just hot. It was crushing, relentless, the kind of heat that made every breath feel like work. But that wasn't what was making her sweat as the helicopter descended toward the landing zone. It was the mission. Morrison had briefed them 3 times. They were going after a high-value target, a Taliban commander operating in the mountains near the Pakistan border. Intel said he was meeting with other commanders in a compound 12 miles from the nearest road. The SEALs would go in on foot, observe, and if the opportunity presented itself, capture or eliminate the target. 30 seconds, the pilot called. The team checked their gear one last time. Sarah's medical pack weighed 40 pounds, carefully organized so she could access any item within seconds. She'd repacked it twice on the flight, nervous energy making her hands move. Martinez caught her eye and gave her a nod. She nodded back. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust. The team piled out and moved quickly to the tree line. By the time Sarah looked back, the helicopter was already gone, leaving them alone in the darkness. Morrison took point. They moved in single file through the rocky terrain, night vision goggles turning the world green. Sarah was in the middle of the formation, right where a medic should be, protected but accessible. The 12 miles took them 6 hours. They moved slowly, carefully, stopping frequently to listen and observe. This wasn't a training exercise. Enemy combatants were all around them. One mistake could get them all killed. Dawn was breaking when they reached the observation point, a rocky outcrop overlooking the target compound. Morrison set up his scope while the others established a perimeter. Sarah found a position where she could see the whole team and settled in to wait. Waiting was part of the job. They might be here for hours or even days, watching, gathering intelligence. Sarah had brought enough medical supplies for a week-long operation. She hoped they wouldn't need any of it. The morning passed slowly. The heat built. Sarah drank water carefully, knowing she had to ration it. Down below, people moved around the compound. Men with weapons, women carrying water, children playing in the dust. "I count 15 military-age males," Morrison whispered into his radio, confirming target presence. More waiting. The sun climbed higher. Sarah's body armor felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Sweat ran down her back, but she didn't move, didn't complain. This was the job. Around noon, everything went wrong. It started with a sound Sarah didn't recognize, a sharp crack from somewhere behind them. Then Morrison's voice, urgent, "Contact rear, we've been spotted." The world exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The SEALs returned fire, their movements smooth and practiced despite the surprise. Sarah stayed low, her rifle ready, scanning for threats. "We need to move," Morrison shouted. "Rally Point Alpha, let's go." They started to fall back, moving in teams, covering each other. Sarah moved with Martinez, her heart pounding. This was nothing like training. The bullets were real. The danger was real. That's when she heard Jackson scream. She turned and saw him go down, blood blooming across his leg. Without thinking, Sarah changed direction and ran toward him, Martinez right behind her. "I'm hit," Jackson gasped. "I'm hit." Sarah slid next to him, already pulling out her medical kit. The bullet had torn through his thigh, missing the femoral artery by inches. "You're going to be okay. I've got you." Martinez positioned himself between them and the enemy, firing controlled bursts. "Work fast, Doc." Sarah's hands moved automatically. Tourniquet, pressure dressing, pain medication. She'd done this 100 times in training, but training dummies didn't scream. They didn't bleed hot blood all over your hands. "Done," she said. "Martinez, help me get him up." They got Jackson to his feet, one arm over each of their shoulders. He tried to put weight on his injured leg and cried out in pain. "Don't use it," Sarah ordered. "We'll carry you." They half carried, half dragged Jackson toward the rally point. Behind them, she could hear Morrison and the others still fighting, covering their retreat. Bullets kicked up dust around their feet. They made it to the rally point, a cluster of rocks that provided some cover. Morrison was already there with 3 other SEALs. Everyone was breathing hard. "Jackson's hit," Martinez reported. "Leg wound, stable for now." Morrison swore. "Anyone else?" "Morrison, you're bleeding," Sarah said, noticing the blood on his arm. "Just a graze, I'm fine." "Let me see it." "Later, we need to." He stopped, looking past Sarah. His face went pale. Where's Ramirez and Chen? Sarah's blood went cold. Chen, no relation to her, and Ramirez had been at the far end of their line. They were covering the left flank. They're not here. Morrison grabbed his radio. Ramirez, Chen, report. Static, then a weak voice. This is Ramirez. We're pinned down. Chen is hit bad. We can't move. Morrison's jaw tightened. Give me your position. 200 meters west of the observation point. In the rocks, but there's too many of them. Don't. The radio went dead. We have to go back, Sarah said immediately. It's a trap, one of the other SEALs said. They're trying to draw us out. I don't care, Sarah shot back. We don't leave people behind. You said that yourself. Morrison looked at her, then at his team. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running low on ammunition. Going back was suicide. I'll go alone, Sarah said. I'm the medic. Chen needs medical attention. Give me cover fire and I'll get to them. Absolutely not, Martinez said. You'll be killed in 30 seconds. Then come with me, but I'm going either way. Morrison made a decision. Martinez, Williams, you're with Chen. The rest of us will lay down suppressing fire. You get to Ramirez and Chen, stabilize them and get back here. 5 minutes, that's all I can give you. Sarah nodded. 5 minutes, she could work with that. They moved out under cover of gunfire from Morrison's position. Sarah ran in a crouch, her medical pack bouncing against her back. 200 meters had never seemed so far. They found Ramirez and Chen behind a fallen boulder. Chen, David Chen, a tall SEAL from California, was unconscious and bleeding from multiple wounds. Ramirez had a bullet through his shoulder and was barely holding his rifle. About time, Ramirez gasped. I thought you forgot about us. Never, Sarah said, already assessing Chen's wounds. Chest wound, sucking air. Leg wound, arterial bleeding. Head wound, unclear severity. Martinez, I need you to hold pressure here while I work on his chest. The next 4 minutes were the longest of Sarah's life. She worked faster than she'd ever worked, sealing the chest wound, clamping the bleeder in his leg, establishing an airway. Around her, Martinez and Williams fired at enemy positions, keeping them at bay. Time's up, Morrison's voice crackled over the radio. Get out of there. He's not stable yet, Sarah said. You're out of time. Sarah looked at Chen. He was still unconscious, still bleeding internally. Moving him now might kill him, but staying here would definitely kill all of them. We move him together, she decided. Williams, help Ramirez. Martinez, you and I take Chen. He's too heavy for you, Martinez said. Then we'd better work together. They got Chen onto Sarah's shoulders in a fireman's carry. The man weighed at least 220, and every ounce of it felt like a ton. But Sarah set her jaw and started moving. Martinez stayed next to her, supporting some of the weight, firing his weapon with his free hand. The trip back was a nightmare. Enemy fire followed them the whole way. Sarah's legs screamed. Her lungs burned. Her bad ankle nearly gave out twice, but she kept going. One step, then another. Chen's blood soaked into her uniform. His breathing was shallow, irregular. Don't you die, she whispered to him. Don't you dare die on me. They made it back to the rally point. Morrison had already called for emergency extraction. A helicopter was inbound, but it was 20 minutes out. 20 minutes they might not have. Sarah immediately went back to work on Chen. She'd done everything she could in the field, but he needed surgery. Soon. She started another IV, gave him more medication, monitored his vitals. They were dropping. Chen, she slapped his face lightly. David, stay with me. His eyes fluttered open briefly. Sarah. Yeah, it's me. You're going to be fine, just stay awake. Can't feel my legs. That's the medication, just breathe. Help is coming. Morrison organized the team's defense. They were surrounded, outnumbered at least 3-1. The Taliban fighters had them pinned down and they knew it. 10 minutes until extraction, Morrison announced. We hold this position, no matter what. What followed was the longest firefight Sarah had ever experienced. The SEALs fought with precision and skill, but they were running out of ammunition. Sarah worked on the wounded between incoming rounds, treating Ramirez's shoulder, rebandaging Jackson's leg, checking Morrison's arm wound despite his protests. 5 minutes until extraction. Chen's pulse was getting weaker. Sarah was running out of options. She'd given him all the blood expanders she had. His internal bleeding was too severe for field treatment. 3 minutes. The sound of helicopter rotors in the distance. The Taliban fighters intensified their assault, knowing their targets were about to escape. "I'm out," one of the SEALs shouted, his rifle empty. Here, Martinez tossed him a magazine. "Last one." Sarah looked around at her team. They were all wounded now, all exhausted, all running on empty. But they were still fighting, still protecting each other. The helicopter appeared over the ridge, taking fire immediately. The pilot maneuvered into position while the door gunner laid down covering fire. "Go, go, go," Morrison shouted. They moved toward the helicopter in pairs. Williams and Ramirez went first. Then Jackson, hobbling on his good leg. Then Morrison and another SEAL carrying Chen between them. That left Sarah and Martinez holding the rear. "You first," Martinez said. "Together," Sarah insisted. They backed toward the helicopter. Firing their last rounds, Sarah's rifle clicked empty, so did Martinez's. They turned and ran. Sarah was 5 feet from the helicopter when she heard Martinez cry out. She spun around and saw him on the ground, blood spreading across his back. "No," she ran back, grabbed him under his arms and dragged him toward the helicopter. He was a big man, solid muscle, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she had. Hands reached out from the helicopter and pulled them both inside. The aircraft lifted off immediately, rounds pinging off the hull. Sarah didn't waste a second. She rolled Martinez onto his side, assessed the wound. Bullet had entered his lower back, no exit wound. Possible spinal damage, possible internal injuries. "Martinez, can you feel your legs?" "Yeah," he gasped. "Hurts like hell." "Good, that's good." She worked quickly, stopping the external bleeding, starting an IV, giving him pain medication. The helicopter raced toward the nearest base. Sarah moved between the wounded, doing what she could with her dwindling supplies. Chen's pulse was barely there. Jackson was stable but in pain. Ramirez was conscious but pale. Morrison's graze had turned out to be a deeper wound than he'd admitted. And Martinez was watching her work with something like wonder in his eyes. "You came back for us," he said quietly. "You could have stayed safe, but you came back." "That's what teammates do," Sarah replied, not looking up from the IV she was placing. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything at the beginning, for doubting you." "Save it. You can apologize when we're safe on the ground and you're stitched up." They landed at the base 16 minutes later. A medical team was waiting. They rushed Chen straight to surgery. The others were taken to the emergency room. Sarah tried to follow, but a doctor stopped her. "Lieutenant, you're injured too." Sarah looked down at herself. She was covered in blood, most of it not hers, but some of it was. She had cuts and bruises she didn't remember getting. Her ankle was swollen to twice its normal size. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "That's an order, Lieutenant. Get checked out." They put her on a gurney despite her protests. A nurse started cleaning her wounds. Sarah kept trying to sit up, asking about her team. "They're all alive," the nurse assured her. "Thanks to you from what I hear." Sarah lay back, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her feeling hollowed out. She'd done her job. Her team was alive. That was all that mattered. She woke up 8 hours later in a hospital bed. Her ankle was in a cast. Her body was bandaged in several places. And Morrison was sitting in a chair next to her bed, his arm properly bandaged. "How are they?" she asked immediately. Jackson and Ramirez will be fine. Full recovery expected. Martinez is in surgery now for the bullet in his back, but the doctors are optimistic. And Chen, Morrison paused. Chen made it through surgery. He's critical but stable. The doctors said if you'd been even 2 minutes slower getting to him, he wouldn't have made it. Sarah closed her eyes, relief washing over her. Sarah, Morrison continued, what you did out there. I've been a SEAL for 20 years. I've served with some of the bravest people in the military, but I've never seen anything like what you did today. You carried 4 wounded men out of a combat zone under heavy fire. Jackson, Ramirez, Chen, and Martinez. You refused to leave anyone behind. You saved all of them. I was just doing my job. No, you went far beyond your job. Do you know how far you carried Chen? I checked the GPS data. From where we found him to the extraction point was over 5,000 meters, uphill, while being shot at. You carried a man who outweighs you by 100 pounds for over 5,000 meters. Sarah hadn't thought about the distance. She just focused on moving forward. The team wants to put you in for a medal, Morrison said. The whole command is talking about what you did. You've become something of a legend. I don't need a medal. I just need my team to be okay. Morrison smiled. They're going to be okay because of you. Over the next few days, Sarah visited each of her teammates. Jackson was already joking around, saying he'd have a cool scar. Ramirez thanked her quietly, shaking her hand with his good arm. Chen, still weak but conscious, had tears in his eyes when he saw her. You saved my life, he whispered. That's what medics do, Sarah replied. Martinez took the longest to recover. The bullet had damaged some nerves in his back and he'd need physical therapy. But he'd make a full recovery, the doctors said. When Sarah visited him, he was sitting up in bed, looking frustrated. They're saying I'll be on limited duty for 6 months, maybe longer. You'll get through it, Sarah said. You're too stubborn not to. He laughed, then winced at the pain. Sarah, I need to say something. When you first showed up, I thought you'd be a liability. I thought having a woman on the team, especially one so small, would put us all in danger. I was wrong. Completely, totally wrong. You're the best medic I've ever worked with, and more than that, you're a hell of a soldier. 3 weeks later, Sarah was called into Commander Hartley's office. Morrison was there, along with several officers she didn't recognize. Lieutenant Chen, Hartley began, I've reviewed the after-action reports from your mission. What you did was extraordinary. In recognition of your actions, I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. Sarah's jaw dropped. The Silver Star was one of the military's highest honors. Additionally, Hartley continued, every member of your team has submitted statements praising your performance. They've unanimously requested that you remain as their medic for future deployments. I'd be honored, sir, Sarah managed to say. There's one more thing. Morrison stepped forward. The SEAL community is small, and word has spread about what you did. You've proven beyond any doubt that you belong in special operations. There are no more questions about whether women can serve in these roles. You've answered that question definitively. Later that day, Sarah stood outside the hospital watching the sun set over the base. Her ankle still hurt. Her body was still healing, but she felt complete, like she'd finally found where she belonged. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. Saw the news about your medal recommendation. Your mother and I are beyond proud. You're not almost a doctor. You're exactly what you're supposed to be, a hero. Sarah smiled and put the phone away. She wasn't a hero. She was just a medic who'd done her job, but maybe that was enough. Martinez wheeled himself outside in his wheelchair. Mind some company. They sat in silence for a while, watching the day fade. You know what's funny? Martinez finally said. Everyone's calling you the medic who carried 4 wounded SEALs 5,000 meters, but that's not the most impressive thing about you. The most impressive thing is that you never once thought about quitting, not during evaluation, not during the mission, not when everyone doubted you. You just kept going. That's true strength. That's what makes you special." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. So she just sat there next to her friend and teammate, watching the stars come out, and felt at peace. 6 months later, she was back in Afghanistan with Morrison's team, all of them fully recovered. They'd been through hell together. They'd saved each other's lives. They were family. And when people asked Sarah about being the only woman on a SEAL team, she'd just smile and say, "I'm not a woman on a SEAL team. I'm a medic, and that's all that matters." Because in the end, that was the truth. She wasn't defined by her gender or her size or anyone else's expectations. She was defined by her actions, her courage, and her refusal to ever give up. She was Lieutenant Sarah Chen, combat medic, SEAL team member, and she'd earned every bit of it. The doubters had been silenced. The skeptics had been proven wrong. And Sarah had found her place in the world, carrying wounded soldiers through impossible terrain, saving lives when everyone else said it couldn't be done, and proving that heart matters more than anything else.